Live from our studios in New York City and San Francisco, it's First and Life with your hosts Corey Lucci and Steve Hoyam. We tackle talk with purpose.
And welcome, everybody, to another First in Life Friday. I'm your host, Steve Hoyam, joined with Corey Lucci. How are you doing, Corey?
I'm well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm in beautiful Columbus, Ohio, getting ready for the big game this weekend. It's got to be the Big Ten matchup of the year, probably, with Wisconsin taking on the Buckeyes at the Horseshoe, and I can't wait. It's my first game at that stadium, and so I'm looking forward to that. This is one of those lifetime sport moments that you get to participate in, and so I'm super excited about that. And it's also my second Buckeye game of the year, so I've actually seen 2 Buckeye games and 2 Stanford games this year, so I'm keeping a fair and balanced approach to the Rose Bowl, I think.
Hey, must be nice. Some guys have all the life, you know.
Right.
2 Stanford, 2 OSU, go for it.
That's right. And, I can wear my Stanford shirt here, and I don't get as many dirty looks as I did when I was up in Berkeley a couple weeks ago, so I like that aspect of it. But I will be decked out in scarlet and gray this weekend, cheering on the Buckeyes against the Wisconsin Badgers. So, and we are, if you're going to the game and want to call in today, or if you've got any other things that we've got a bunch to talk about. We want to talk about the 49ers and Jim Harbaugh, Andrew Luck, that game, and then the 49ers again last night, hopefully trying to make something out of this season that hasn't gone so well so far, and then talk about college football and some activity there. There's plenty to talk about, so we do want to get started. You're listening to First in Life. The number to call in is 714-510-3759. Again, that's 714-510-3759. And we're on Twitter, Facebook. You can look us up on the internet at www.firstandlife.com, FIRSTANDLIFE.com. And so we got all that out of the way. Last week we had a great show with Denise Kavanaugh. So that's up there. It's on iTunes. You can check it out, talking about intentional, energetic presence and just how you can show up at that meeting, at that reunion, wherever you're going to show up, where you're going to be. Show up with intention and energy and watch what happens. And so Corey and I are trying to put that into some practice this afternoon, actually. I'm still on Pacific time. And see what happens in today's show. So we'll give it a shot. Corey.
Yes,
so
sir.
How are you doing, man? I can't believe how beautiful it is in Ohio right now. I mean, the sun it feels close, and the sky's blue. The trees are still green. It's a beautiful fall afternoon. It's not even fall yet. It's late summer, right?
Well, so, I can't exactly say that for New York City right now. It's a gray, hazy day. Not exactly cool or cold, but not warm either. I'll just say that old man winter is certainly coming.
Yeah.
I noticed last night as I came in, the temperature is starting to drop.
Getting ready for the Super Bowl
compared to what it is. Yeah, getting ready for the Super Bowl. No, getting ready for Halloween first.
Okay. Well, yeah. Oh man. So Super Bowl. Who's going to be in the Super Bowl this year? What if you had to pick today? Who would it be?
I'm still going with who I said all along. San Francisco, Denver. I know Seattle sort of handed San Francisco their butts, and then they lost again. But yeah. I really still especially after watching them last night. They definitely weren't quite San Francisco of last year, but boy, they look so much better.
Well, that's a thing that Harbaugh has been excellent at wherever he's been. At Stanford, I got to see this. He's able to get the teams to regroup after a loss, a tough loss, whatever. Somehow he manages to hold that team together, and they come out and they play harder the next week, after a loss. And some teams have the opposite problem. They just fall apart and people start, pointing fingers and everything. Probably a little bit what you're seeing at Texas right now, where, hey, this is a team that had 19 returning starters, was everyone's pick to at least be in the top 10. And now it's questionable whether or not their coach is going to survive. But we saw in San Francisco for the first time some question marks about Harbaugh, Colin Kaepernick. I mean, just everyone was starting to really question what was going on here, which after last year, expectations had gotten pretty high. The team goes to the Super Bowl and puts on a battle, whether or not you believe there was a conspiracy around the lighting like Ray Lewis. But we won't go there. We'll just say, look, San Francisco was a little bit spoiled last year. Got the World Series, the Super Bowl. Everything seemed to be all right in San Francisco. And then this year, the Giants, out of it. So baseball is dead. All eyes are on football. And what's going on? They're losing to Seattle. They lose to the Colts. Finally pull together a win last night. So that's definitely everyone's happier in San Francisco. But, what happened on Sunday was really a low point in the program. And I think what's funny to me about it is how it happened and who was involved. You had Andrew Luck, former quarterback for Jim Harbaugh at Stanford, come in his second year in the NFL and put together a game that, if you look on it statistically, it wasn't all that flashy, right? There was nothing really all that remarkable about it. It was just a solid, steady football game by Andrew Luck. But what really showed up was the running attack and the balance that they were able to have. And then when it finally came time, that bootleg that Andrew ran in for a touchdown was
I saw that. Yeah.
Quite an exclamation point on it. And apparently I've been reading some of the stories around that, and it was one of those situations where Andrew was probably one of the few guys on the field that knew what was going to happen. The rest of the guys, were fully expecting a run play, so they obviously sold the run. But, it was probably just the quarterback and the running back that knew what was actually going to happen. Even the coach said that that was a call that Andrew made at that time, and it worked. You rarely see misdirection work that well, especially on a goal. But he saw something that made it work, and that's one of the things that made me fall in love with Andrew Luck. Back when he was at Stanford, just watching him brilliantly control the game, even though he wasn't throwing for miles of statistics, he was in control and taking the field down. And so he definitely plays an execution style game that works out well in that situation.
I think given that whole situation, is, if you really think about it, it's one of the few trades, if you will, I can't really say trade. Well, I guess you could say trade, because they did trade, or pick up picks with. Oh no, they didn't. I'm sorry. They cut Peyton Manning. I was about to say it was one of the few rare trades that actually work out for both teams. So, most of the time when you see these trades, it's usually lopsided. When you go back to like for instance, years ago, Herschel Walker being traded to the Cowboys from the Vikings. I think they gave up half their team basically. To get him there. If you go back even to last week, Trent Richardson going to the Colts from the Browns. Now, the Browns won, so it's easy to not think about it, but it's still early. When it gets cold and you need that big bruising back up at the Browns Stadium when it's actually snowing, I think they're gonna think back on those days and be like, wow, you know what? We should have kept Trent. But in this case, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. I was gonna say
he had to be one of their better players to begin with, right?
Their general manager came out and said he was their best player.
Right.
And that's why I was like, wow, you don't usually see someone say that. Now maybe they were trying to hype him up.
Sure.
I guess making it sound like it was really really better than it actually was. I think somewhat of a knock on him had been that he was injured often last year, because if you remember, he started training camp late because of the holdout. His rookie season. Then he finally comes in, and I think within the second game he gets hurt. He hurts his calf.
Right.
And, part of that is just he's such a big guy. He's so cut up. I don't think there's hardly any body fat on him. So he's been prone to not injuries, but like nagging things. Like you pull a calf muscle. You pull a quad. Nagging things. Nothing like tearing up a knee or a shoulder or anything like that. So who knows? Who knows?
No, I mean, you and I would see that from time to time. We never had this problem ourselves, but you would see guys that were literally in such great physical shape that they could hurt themselves walking because their muscles were so powerful.
No, you're right. Yeah,
you can pull a hamstring on your way to breakfast in the morning, and you're too strong to lift that plate of bacon and eggs, And what happens is you get those kind of freak injuries that you're starting to see now, where you get guys with torn triceps and biceps and pec muscles and hamstrings. I mean, that's they're able to get these guys back on the field faster than ever before. But you're right, when you get these nagging type injuries, it's such a a paradox because the guys that get those are typically guys that are in awesome physical condition. And there's nothing more that they could do in the weight room. So you really have to figure out, okay, how do we get this guy to maybe balance things out and maybe put a little more fat on his in his muscle tissue to help out there. I don't know what it is. Flexibility. I would probably at this point in my perspective give him some yoga prescriptions and say, hey man, get yourself into some sort of yoga class for the flexibility and rebalance your strength.
Pilates.
Yeah, I mean that'll give you a level. That'll make sure that the balance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with your muscle strength in your body is aligned in a healthier way. So you don't get some. If guys just do bench press all day, they're going to become unbalanced in their strength, and their chest and their arms are going to be way stronger than everything else, and that's going to set them up for danger. So anyway, we're drifting here, Corey. So bringing us back to 49ers. We're still on it, right? The point I was trying to make was that the point I was really making is that if you look at some of the major offseason moves right now so far, Denver seems to be paying the biggest dividends. They added Wes Walker, and he seems to be Peyton Manning's best friend. Meanwhile, up in New England, the biggest knock on them was by letting him go and bringing in, and I can never say this kid's last name right, Danny Amendola, something like that, who used to be with the Colts. By the way, by bringing him in, he was a great receiver, but he was often injury prone. So what happened? He pulled a hernia 2 weeks ago in a game, and now he's going to be out for the next 5 weeks. Oh,
so
wow.
It's just to like tell the two different trades and the off season picks, and it just shows who's reaping the benefit so far.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? All these trades, you're going to start to see that more and more, and it'll really start to show themselves. Because I think Denver is probably the team to beat in the AFC. Clearly, I mean, that's not a main point to celebrate here, but the way they're doing it, the way they're playing, and you see a veteran like Peyton Manning and Wes Walker come to the same team, and it's clear what they're doing. They're saying, hey, we can make this team a Super Bowl team, and they're going to show the way. They both have had that experience, and they know what it takes. And Denver is hungry. The fans are hungry. The John Elway is hungry for a Super Bowl title in Denver. So I think the only team that's going to stop the Denver Broncos is the Denver Broncos right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I was thinking of this poll that I saw, School of the Legends. They were asking former players, basically, who would they choose as their quarterback? If you had to choose a quarterback today between Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, who would it be? Mm-hmm. And out of almost 200 former players that have commented on that so far, it's almost a 2-to-1 in favor of Peyton Manning over Tom Brady. What do you think about that?
I'm really surprised by that. I'm really surprised, and the reason I am surprised is because Peyton Manning, for as great as he is, and he is, he's special. I don't think you'll ever see another one quite like him. He's only won one Super Bowl. Tom Brady has 4.
Yeah. Wow.
So for me, if it's truly about the ring, and if it's truly about winning, because they're both great competitors, they're both fiery guys, they're both captains and the leaders of their squad. I personally think Tom Brady over the years has managed to get more out of the folks that he was surrounded with versus Peyton.
Right.
And maybe I'm wrong for saying that. But if you think about it, a lot of those weekends, a lot of those final playoff spots came down to who? New England, Indy, and Peyton couldn't get over the hump. So, could it be the Manning effect? I think so. Could it be the fact that ESPN just did this documentary, which is very heartfelt? So let me stop. Something like I'm actually hating on them because I'm not. But they did a very nice documentary, Steve. That talked about the Mannings from Archie, Eli. I think the brother's name is Carson, who, by the way, from what everyone has said, was a better athlete than Peyton and Eli. But he unfortunately broke his neck his junior year of high school, so he had to stop playing.
Right.
And they documented that. So I don't know. I'm not surprised that some former players chose Peyton, but I think hands down you have to go with Tom Brady. Who would you pick?
Well, I voted in that poll and I picked Peyton for two reasons. One is just look at the performance this year and the numbers that Peyton's doing now. And it's
well,
really
this
what
year,
it's yeah. Now, and you look at their body of work, and I'm just still leaning towards Peyton just because he had more hype than Tom Brady coming out of college, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the year that Peyton came out, there was Ryan Leaf and Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was kind of this.
Oh, that's been a big hot topic. Oh yeah, that's been a big thing about how much different who took Leaf? Was it San Diego that took him?
That was the Chargers.
Yeah. San Diego. How much different San Diego's team could have been. Now, granted, they ended up finding Philip
Rivers,
and it's all worked out there. But people have always questioned how much different the Colts could have ended up being in San Diego, and that's why I always tell folks, when you're drafting, dude, you're not just drafting for today. You're truly drafting for your future, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, and ask any Redskin.
So you're absolutely right.
Ask any Washington Redskin fan who got the better quarterback, the Colts or the Redskins, and I think the tide is starting to shift on that one. And it's not to take anything away from RG3 and what he has done. He's just clearly not the same guy.
I think about it, Steve. Now let's give him a little bit of a break. He's coming off of an ACL surgery.
Right.
I personally don't even think he should even be out there playing. That's just me personally. Now, I realize that, in today's game, and especially with Adrian Peterson coming back from his surgery and doing so well, he's essentially put a lot of pressure on a lot of people.
I know.
What I will say is that when you look at RG3, he's not comfortable. He can't really run, okay? Andrew Luck has never been a running quarterback. He's always been that pure pocket passer that, every now and then could, run a bootleg and scamper into the end zone, all right? RG3's game essentially has been predicated upon the fact that he could run. He has that threat of actually running, so you have to respect that. And then all of a sudden, when you think he's going to run, so you put 8 men in a box, he literally fakes that run and he drops back and he hits you for 40-yard bomb. What's still funny is, believe it or not, I saw this stat and this was very, very intriguing. Who do you think has the most 40-yard or more completions over the last 2 years?
Oh, gosh.
And this is probably somewhat of a giveaway.
It's going to be
Sorry. Say it again?
Will I be surprised by the answer?
I think you would be. And I'm only using this as an example, so let's just go ahead and say it
so
now.
It's either Tommy or RG3?
No, neither one.
Okay.
Cam Newton.
Oh, okay.
Cam Newton. So I use that as an example because Cam, if you think about it, RG3 and Cam's game are very, very similar, okay?
Right.
Cam hasn't been injured, all right? Cam Newton can run, but Cam Newton always looks to pass the ball first before running. I'm not taking anything from any of these young guys. I'm happy to see them all doing very, very well. I just think RG3 and the front office there should have gotten on the same page, man, and said, okay, you know what? Let's rest him. You got a proven quarterback in Kirk Cousins there. He came on and did very, very well for you last year. Look, let him play. You rest us. You truly heal up, rest up, and then you come back. Maybe week 5 or 6. I think the other problem, Steve, with them is that if you really, really look at them, he isn't up to game shape yet. So that's that's why a lot of his passes are like skipping, or he's missing people that are essentially wide open because he's not up to game speed. And think about it. Marv used to always tell us fatigue makes cowards of us all.
That's right.
So now he goes from looking like this world quarterback to he's just average. So it's so funny because even now, and I'm not criticizing you, but think about it. You just said you think people, even the fans in Washington, are starting to actually see who got the better deal out of that trade. It's like, wow, it just goes to really show you, what have you done for me lately? No, what are you going to do for me next week?
Right.
And
people these guys are so young. Right. These guys are so young.
No, they are. No, they are.
Towards you, right? And they're saying, okay, Alon looks like he's going to be in his second year, and he got banged up. Is he going to be able to be RG3 and survive in the NFL? And that's where the question is starting.
Okay. Well, how about this? Because of the success that Russell Wilson had last year, RG3 had last year, Andrew Luck had last year. In some ways, although limited, Tannehill down at the Dolphins had last year, or at least this year, because guess what? They're 3-0 now. They have essentially put pressure on these younger quarterbacks this year, like Geno Smith. This kid can't even catch a break. Hell, the Jets are 2-1, believe it or not, and I'm still sitting there scratching my head going, are the Jets really 2-1?
Right.
Then granted, they played Buffalo last week, so that wasn't a challenging game. But the fact that they're 2-1, and if you had to listen to the average fan talk or the average sports host talk 2 weeks ago, they were ready to run this kid out of town. Yeah. Why? Because they're comparing him to Andrew Luck, RG3, Russell Wilson, and Tannehill.
Yeah.
Ryan.
And another thing that you brought in, too, the Adrian Peterson factor, which is now you look at someone, it used to be, okay, this guy blew out his ACL, he's done. His career will never be the same. And that was just the assumption, presumption, whatever, that people looked at it, right? An ACL is not what Adrian Peterson did last year, and this is your point, is now everyone expects after an ACL that you come back better than ever and faster than ever too, right? And so if you are in RG3 situation, people are looking at you and the pressure's got to be immense. And I think even in Tom Brady are feeling pushed by these younger quarterbacks.
Listen to this, Steve. RG3 did an article in Sports Illustrated. And he said that he was sitting in his hospital bed, and he had just come out of surgery. He was thinking about what he had to do to get back. And somehow, don't ask me how, but somehow he looked at the dates, he wrote down something, and he scribbled out, mysteriously, 9/3 something. I was like, huh? And it was all about being back for opening day. So that's been his goal. Now, I don't care what anyone says. That had to have come from the fact that Adrian Peterson had so much success coming back 1 year later. Right. So it's a lot of ego involved in that. Right. And I think, even early on in the season, man, when Donovan McNabb, former Eagles/Redskins QB, was taking a lot of heat because he said that it's a shame that RG3 is not listening and would not even meet with him, because he was just saying that he wanted to share some things with him. And, RG3 was of the opinion that he was like, I don't need this dude, telling me anything. So again, that's that ego, man. That's that. I've come in, to the NFL. I've sort of taken it by storm. You can't really tell me anything. Okay. Right. What I will say is this to all of the quarterbacks, not this quarterback, all of the players coming in. Take a look at the situation now down at Tampa, and I guess this is a great segue to go into this. Josh Freeman essentially was considered the better quarterback out of the draft 3 years ago. He came in and he set it on fire. They were winning. Now, granted, it was a different head coach then. They had Raheem Mark, but he won his first 15 games easily. Right. And now essentially he's looking at a situation where not only has he been benched, but he could very much so be traded here within the next 2 weeks or so because of a fundamental difference between him and the head coach. Now, I don't want to get into this, kicking things back and forth around or whatever. But all I'm saying is RG3, whomever, Tannehill, whatever quarterback should take notice that, okay, you can be up one day and, boy, you can be down the next. And, unfortunately, when you're down, it's not a situation of what have you done for me lately. It's what are you going to do again for me tomorrow and next week.
That's right. And, it is ego. We'll call it what it is. And
a lot of ego.
But it's also the competitive instinct of any athlete. And we'll take a quick break here, but we're right at the half of the hour. But the medical profession needs to intervene in this at different points where they're not to be found right now. And there's a couple of cases that I want to go back to that we mentioned about Aldon Smith in the 49ers game. But doctors need to really be empowered to make this decision for the athlete, for the coaches. And they're not really doing that yet the way they should be. It's getting better than it was when we were playing, where the doctor was just kind of there to make sure that, he could slap a cast on any broken bone that showed up. But
I don't even want to, I don't even want to really go there with talking about our doctors, bro. Clearly they were not an advocate for you. Right. All right. They were trying to get you back on the field, either have you, on film, right. And he went out and played a game, cut him.
right?
You know,
You're listening to First and Life on Blog Talk Radio.
So, yes, you are listening to First and Life. Again, you want to call in and join the discussion, 714-510-3759, 714-510-3759. If you're listening to us live, we'll take your call. We don't have any wait right now, so the switchboard is open. You can dive right in and talk to us about 49ers, and we're really talking right now about the state of the medical profession in the locker room. The number one point I wanted to make on the Harbaugh-Luck reunion in San Francisco last week, the most disturbing element of this whole story is Aldon Smith, and he definitely was having some problems right before the game, getting arrested on, was it Friday night or Saturday morning, or it was
early Saturday morning.
Yeah, the time of day when nothing good ever happened, right? So, but he was driving while intoxicated for not the first time and arrested. And it is clear at that point, when you get arrested for your second DUI, there's a whole system that kicks in the NFL, right? You go in through mandatory drug testing, you go through this disciplinary thing. Aldon Smith suited up, he was active, and he played on Sunday against the Colts. And then after the game, announces that he's going to seek treatment for alcoholism and everything else, and that, you know, he's going down his path of recovery. So while that part of it is awesome and great, and I want to acknowledge Aldon for making that choice and going down that path of recovery, the decision to actually have him play in the game and be on the sideline, it reminded me of what the Cowboys did with Josh Brent. It was even worse, actually, right? If the Cowboys would have played Josh Brent after he had killed one of his teammates while drunk driving, we would just never hear the end of it. And what was so different about what Aldon Smith did? You know, he didn't happen to have killed anyone that night. You know, and Aldon Smith is lucky because this is not his first DUI. You know, there was this whole story breaking about him shooting guns at a party earlier this year. I mean, got a chance, an opportunity here to be in recovery and hopefully turn his life around. But here's a situation where the team said you can play. And any athlete in that situation is going to choose to always compete because that's their job. That's what they love to do. So he's going to show up, put his pads on, and go out and play the game as long as they'll let him. But the fact that someone didn't say, hey, this is wrong. This guy's got a problem. We need to make sure that he gets help. You know, that's not a wait until after the game problem. That's a right now problem. What do you think about that, Corey?
Well, first of all, Steve, you know, I certainly agree with you. I don't want to come on this show and sound like I'm saying anything like that. I don't even really drink anymore. I may have a social drink every now and then. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've never gotten behind the wheel of a car, after actually having a drink. I just think that it's a bigger problem here because it is his second offense. Not only is it his second offense, but he shouldn't even been at the stadium, personally.
No, I totally agree.
You know?
Like Josh Brett shouldn't have been on the sidelines. Shouldn't have been in the stadium.
Football right now, we're talking about life or death. We're not talking about a game. We're not talking about a sport. We're not talking about 2 hours on Sunday. Clearly this young man has some major demons going on, and I don't know him personally, so I don't even want to come across as if I'm judging him. But Steve, first thing I thought about was like, wow, he's essentially playing for a contract,
Yeah.
So again, not to talk about the business and not to talk about the game, but he doesn't even realize that he just literally set himself up to where I don't care what team he goes to from this day forward. Guess what? There's always going to be a clause in there.
Yeah.
We'll pay you this money, for some reason. And I look at him and I think about him being similar to a kid that came out, man, when we were playing, named Leonard Little. Leonard played at the University of Tennessee. He was St. Louis Rams first-round pick, and he had 3, not 1, but 3 DUIs. And I think on the 4th one or the 3rd one, he finally hit someone and he killed him. That's why I say this is so much bigger than a game of football. This is so much bigger than a contract. Even it's like, dude, get this thing under wraps and do it quickly because something's wrong. Something is truly wrong. So I'm not totally sure, Steve, what's going on with with San Francisco and their front office and their thoughts. But you know what I will say is that for Aldon's sake, I hope he takes the 5 weeks, or I think he said he's gonna be leaving for 4 or like 5 weeks. I hope and pray that he takes the 5 weeks and he takes this time, man, to explore, you know, if you will, what's truly going on with his life.
I keep dropping off, so I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You're fine. So hopefully he will come back, you know, a better man. And you know, my prayer for him is that this time next year, even, you know, he'll be going around trying to help someone else out versus the team and the league having to help him out, because this is something that we certainly take serious at first in life, and it's you know, nothing to play with, man. So yeah, so you just hope, Steve, that it's not a situation where he thinks, oh, he's young and he's sack master of the San Francisco, not just the San Francisco 49ers, I'm sorry, sack master of the NFL. You know, when you said it was some rumors out there that he fired a gun. You know, this is much to do about ego as it is drinking, Steve. You know, I really do feel this way. I don't know, you know, again, what's going on with some of these cats that are coming into the league, man. You're 20-something years old. You got the opportunity of a lifetime. You know, you're making money that can not just change your life, but change your entire family's life. And I don't know, some of them tend to take things for granted, and you know, again, not to keep harping on this, but it goes back to Aaron Hernandez. Even, you know, you kind of stop and you scratch your head and you wonder, like, man, oh man, how selfish can these kids or can these young folks be? So I don't know, but anyway, prayers would go out to Aldon, his family, San Francisco. I will say, I think what's going to probably come out of this though is if you go back to last year and just the sheer number of cases of guys, you know, driving being caught or being pulled over and obviously getting arrested for DUI. I think what you're going to probably see set in motion is a drastic change of policy within the NFL. Period.
Yeah.
I think you're going to start to see a situation where if you get caught once, you're probably going to be suspended for the rest of the year.
Well, you know, and they need to go beyond just the punishment aspect of it, but look at these teams and say, look, why didn't they do something last year along these lines and say when a player is arrested for DUI or any like major arrest right before a game, they don't play in that game. Now, innocent until proven guilty and all of that, granted, but you know, like, you can't just pull the guy out of the jail cell and put him out on the field and then deal with it later. You got to deal with it right here, right now. Have people who are more objective about this making these calls and decisions. And the fact that you're not hearing a lot from Roger Goodell and the NFL about what happened here is disturbing to me. And again, that's pointing to
But Steve, you got to look at the current system that's in place.
No, I know. They don't
even hand out punishment until you've essentially been tried in a court of law and proven guilty or innocent. Right. And you know what I'm saying is, and I think we're saying the same thing here. It goes beyond the fact of whether or not a person is innocent or guilty. You know, if you're out drinking and you get caught or you're firing a gun, something is wrong with you. You know, there's some issues there. So get the guy help. You know, so I agree with you.
Any experience in addiction, substance abuse, all that is going to look at the facts and circumstances of his career and say, look, this guy has, with all the stuff he has on the line, has risked the consequences not once, twice. And again, when you point to guys like Leonard Little, that, you know, we're talking 3-4 times, you know, clearly there's something going on here that's not getting better. Intervention needs to occur, and there needs to be a process, objective process to that, because I don't think the league is capable or interested in serving the interests of the players who are suffering, you know, and certainly not the teams themselves. It's like any medical condition, they're going to find the first doctor to sign off and say this guy's okay to play. And I don't think if you objectively analyze the situation, you would say that this person needs to be playing in a football game right now. They should be on their way to getting some help for what appears to be a clear problem. And now it's been acknowledged and owned by Aldon, and hopefully he's on the road to recovery there. So, I do think that we agree on that. A policy change needs to occur, and I think it needs to be a holistic policy change when it comes to players' health,
right.
Whether it's a concussion on the field, whether it's anything. There needs to be a little bit of objectivity in the process, maybe not just a little bit, but a lot, because we're going to be talking about some decisions that for financial reasons or ego reasons or whatever are not going to get made when they need to get made. It's just obvious, right? Players are going to play as much as you let them play. That's just the way we're wired. We're not going to stop until someone says stop or blows a whistle in our ear. So changing the topic here a little bit, we didn't. If anyone has an opinion on Aldon Smith and the 49ers and what they did or didn't do, please call us at 714-510-3759. We'll try to get you on the air, even though we're having some technical problems on my end. The story that kind of popped up and jarred me this morning was former Chargers safety Paul Oliver. Did you hear this one?
Yeah, I know.
Suicide, yeah. Former Georgia Bulldog, 29 years old, 2 kids and a wife. Played at Georgia for a couple of years and then was drafted in the supplemental draft to San Diego. And, just one of those gut-wrenching stories that we've begun to hear. It's become all too common, is the self-inflicted gunshot wound former players. And you and I both talked several times about what happens and what can happen in that spiral of hopelessness and depression that just pops out of nowhere with a lot of our former teammates and players. So our hearts go out to that and whatever can be done for the friends and family and teammates. We definitely want to be on the supporting line of that, and hopefully we can all come together and find out what can be done. I mean, depression is not just something that affects football players, it affects everyone in this nation and world. We do hear about it when a former player or current player does something wrong. Aldon Smith was not the only one to be arrested for a DUI that night, I'm sure. But we heard about it because he is Aldon Smith and because he does play for the San Francisco 49ers. So the attention is there, both good and bad, all the time. And so who knows? We'll keep our noses to that story to see if there's any more about the CTE connection. It's almost hard to think that it's not at this point, because almost every autopsy that they do, and I assume that they'll try to autopsy and do a brain sample on Oliver, but we'll see. I'm fully expecting CTE to be part of the discussion when this unfolds.
All right.
So
that makes total sense.
Sad. That's just one of the more tragic stories of this week, and I really hate talking about that stuff, but it's important. Yeah. So I think the commissioner needs to take a more active role in saying, what the policy and guidelines should be for returning to play, and there should be some study. Hopefully they don't make it a knee-jerk reaction, but at this point they need something and need something now. This isn't like, let's get a panel of doctors together and talk about what rules changes we'll make for next year. This needs to happen right now, in my humble opinion. So, what else? So let's switch gears a little bit in the remaining portion of the show and switch over to maybe some college football talk. And one of the big stories there is the talk around paying college players and what APU, the All Players United movement. That I can't quite tell if this is picking up steam or not. There's certainly more positive support at this point than I would have expected, but the players are definitely not being supported by their institutions, their schools, their athletic departments, their coaches to join this movement and at least show, you're seeing on wristbands and somewhere on their uniform some APU symbol and showing that their sympathy toward this movement. And This is not a new movement. This is, I've talked to guys that were back in the 70s playing in college, and they wanted to form a players' union for college players. Back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when I was playing at Stanford, there was some discussion about it. It's never really gone away. It's never really gone anywhere. I mean, everyone is to hold these guys back, but it becomes harder and harder for the NCAA, who's making money, or at least making sure that money is being made by people. There's certainly a conflict of interest there in terms of what they're allowing players to do and not do. And the story hasn't changed. It's, the players get money for room, books, tuition, all that stuff, and they don't have a lot of money when it's all paid and done, right? I mean, when you pay your rent check and your meals, you don't have a lot of spending money, and it's not like you can just go out and get a part-time job either. Between school and football, there's no time, and oh, by the way, the NCAA doesn't even let you work, so you're kind of dependent on your parents for any financial support, and these guys don't come from the same parents. They don't come from the same backgrounds. Some kids show up driving a brand new BMW, and some kids show up without even a bicycle to get across campus.
No, some kids show up with $20 to their name,
right,
in one bag.
Right.
I'll be the first one to tell you, I didn't realize how fortunate I was until I got to college. And knew like clockwork every Thursday, right, whether it be my mom, my dad, my sisters, and my brothers, putting money into my little account. And then I'm meeting people that never went home. Holidays come, like, dude, why you staying around here? Oh, I don't have the money to get home. What? I'm like, well, come home with me. I tell you what surprised me. Mel Kiper was on, Steve, and he actually proposed that the NFL start a minor league system just like baseball, so that a kid that doesn't want to go to college just goes straight to the minor leagues with football. I just think that with football and basketball, it's so different. Football is so physical, man. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. When I first heard someone suggest that, I mean, this is years before Mel Kiper suggesting it recently, but, my reaction was no. I wouldn't want that. I don't want a minor league of football. I think the system of using the colleges and the rivalries and the traditions is what makes the whole sport special, because people who, you could be a Buckeye fan, you could be a Stanford Cardinal fan or a Gamecock fan, and you get to watch these guys go off and play in the NFL. College football has always been the source of football fans, and college football has really been held back by the NCAA, and the schools are starting to fight back. SC's going in and saying, hey, you guys made a mistake. You punished us way too hard for what now doesn't seem as bad. When Cam Newton got off, when Johnny Manziel is getting off, it's just not fair what you did to our program. And Penn State made the same argument and has had some success in getting their punishment tapered down a little bit. So SC's trying their luck and seeing what they can do and getting some scholarships back. And I'm sure that Ohio State is not happy about what happened to them. And, there's just a disparity in the way these rules are being enforced. And some of these rules are just a little bit outdated and antiquated. But I am definitely, no matter what happens, I'm not in favor of these kids getting handed large sums of money or negotiating contracts or anything like that. I think that, if anything, it should go towards the institutions in a way that is going to allow them to get a college degree. It may not happen while they're playing football, but that's okay. That's understandable as long as they're on track and maintain that. And, give them an extra year of education after football, whether they're playing 15 years in the NFL and they want to come back, or if they, just go to camp and don't make it, or if they don't even go anywhere. If they've played the game through 4 years of school, they should get, some year of education that's free aspect of it.
You're listening to First and Life on Blog Talk Radio.
Folks, I'm not sure what happened with Steve there. He got kicked off, but just to continue what he was saying, I think he was essentially saying that the NCAA should pay players, and I think that's a slippery slope. I don't necessarily agree with payment per se, but definitely set aside some money so that by the time a kid is out of school, regardless whether he turns pro early or not, there's some money and a fund where if for instance, if he decided to come back to go on and to pursue his master's or his doctorate, that it could be done too, because the current system, how it's actually set up, is that you can come back technically for 1 year after your graduating class, and if you don't graduate, then unfortunately there's no money for you. And I'm a little bit different. I don't like to make excuses up for today's youth, because I tend to take the approach that part of the issue we do have is this sense of entitlement, which I think is a very, very dangerous place to be. But that being said, you can't just let the NCAA off scotch free here too. So who knows? Something's going to have to change, and I think a lot of things are going to change anyway. Just from that lawsuit that Ed O'Bannon filed, I think as that heats up, and if they do end up being held responsible for obviously hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion, then I think you're going to see a drastic change overnight.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
So, no. But that being said, man, you ready to do some of our picks?
I think so. Where do you want to start, college or pros?
It's up to you. I'll let you decide.
Well, let's start the college picks. The games of the week for me, would be Ohio State versus Wisconsin. That's the one I'm going to be at. But for a lot of reasons, it's definitely a Big Ten matchup of the week, and it's got a lot of Rose Bowl implications. I think. So I'm definitely picking the Buckeyes in that game. Got them at home.
Well, my game of the week right now, Steve, would have to be LSU at Georgia. I think it's going to be really, really big. I think that LSU has what it takes to actually come in to Sanford Stadium and upset Georgia. It's always a good game. I think by far the game is going to be much closer than people are anticipating. And then from there, it's you just have to look around. My game cards are actually playing UCF, so I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, excuse me, not sure what's going to happen there. I know the Gamecocks are going to win, but I hope they don't take them lightly. Yeah, just hope they don't take them lightly there. So,
and you don't want guys to get hurt. Sorry.
Right. Another team in South Carolina, Clemson Tigers are playing Wake Forest. I really don't think that was going to be close. Essentially, Clemson need not to get caught up in looking past, because I think they have a big game coming up against Florida State. So we hope that they don't get caught looking past. But and then of course you have the Bama game. And I think it's more hype than anything. But you got to realize that Bama is still number one in the country. Yeah. Ole Miss is coming in riding a 3-0 win total right now. But I just don't think Ole Miss has enough, man, to do any damage to Bama.
Right. Well, it is fun to watch these SEC schools finally start to match up, and all the conference games are fun to watch. And you get to realize, okay, the SEC is a deep conference, the Pac-12 is a deep conference. I mean, I'm really interested in the Arizona-Washington game, because I think one of those teams, Arizona's in the south of that conference, and Washington's in the north, but they're both kind of the wild card teams that could make a run at it. Especially now with this USC is drifting out there. We'll see how Arizona State bounces back. If they can play like they played in the second half of the Stanford game, they shouldn't have any trouble with USC.
Okay. I'll be looking out for that one.
You're listening to First and Life on Blog Talk Radio.
And folks, this is Corey Lucci, your other co-host with First in Life. And as we were going over our picks, something happened there with Steve on the board. So I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward here, and I'm sure he'll probably come back and join us. But excuse me, as you heard us talking about some of the major college games and who we're gonna do what, when, where, and how. When he joins us here again, I would love to go ahead and go over to the pro games. I mean, obviously, every game now is big for the New York Giants, considering the fact that they have not won a game. One of the questions I wanted to ask Steve about was what was his biggest surprise at this point in the NFL season. The fact that the Kansas City Chiefs were 3-0, the Miami Dolphins were 3-0, or that the Giants had not won a game.
I'm back.
I think he's going to probably. All right, great. I was sort of fast forwarded part now. I said I was gonna ask you a question of what was your biggest surprise at this point in the season? The fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are 3-0 and the Dolphins are 3-0, or the fact that the Giants had not won a game.
Well, the biggest surprise for me in the NFL season right now is just, exactly that. Who is 3-0 or 2-1 versus who's 1-2 or 0-3, and I would not have been able to pick that at all at this point. I'm shocked with the Giants record. I'm shocked with the 49ers record. They're 2-2 now, right? But I expected them to be 4-0, 3-1.
Oh yeah.
I think everyone else did too, but. Chicago's 3-0. The Dolphins, there's a lot of surprises. And I think
Kansas City, Chicago, right. Dolphins, who else? I think Seattle.
Yeah. There's a lot of parity in the league, and we talk about that every now and then. I think that you see that more and more that, with the exception of a couple of teams, just about any team could beat any team Sunday, right? To use that cliche. Tampa Bay is not in that category. The Jets are in, the Bills are, they're not there yet. But, clearly I think the Colts are going to challenge in the AFC. They might as well be the team to beat. Going back to the whole Peyton versus Brady thing, I don't think Tom Brady has the leadership skills to do with the Patriots what they need to do this year.
I'll give you that.
That's just what I've seen that on the sidelines. I think he's pushing just a little too much, and he doesn't have the supporting cast that he's going to need. Now Peyton, on the other hand, and then on the NFC side, I'm still partial to the 49ers, but I am I'm very surprised with the 49ers situation, and probably more than any other. That loss to the Colts was, I expected them to come.
You're listening to First and Life on Blog Talk Radio. Thank you for listening to another episode of First and Life. Please visit our website at www.firstandlife.com and join us live every Friday as we tackle talk with purpose.